Hello guys, and welcome back to another episode of, you guessed it, Engines of the Taiga Village Forest Railway! In this video, we'll talk about the locomotive that I said that will be coming soon, the Taiga Village Forest Railway G1 210 Santa Fe types. But with that out of the way, let's begin the history of this massive locomotive. But to understand this locomotive history, we need to understand the real arrangement of this locomotive. Yes. The 210-2 real arrangement came into an existence in 1903 by the Actis and Topeka and Santa Fe Railway. This became known as the Santa Fe type, named after the first railroad to use it. And the locomotive of that type weren't popular until 1914, and from that day on until 1920, when it started to decline due to high maintenance costs and talent and counterbalance issues. 2,000 classes of 210-2s have been many 210-2 Santa Fe type steam locomotives were built and delivered, with 2,000 of those, with 2,000 classes of 210-2s being built and delivered to the American railroads. From 1920, yes, and let's begin. From 1920 to 1924, the Taiga Village Forest Railway was almost at its poor financial failure. Earning at the railway at that time was nicknamed the Poor Taiga Village, the Poor Taiga Village Forest Railway. However, despite that almost failure period, the railway still continues to buy brand new steam locomotive, and with new Pacifics and 10-wheelers were built to haul passenger trains, as well as new 482 Mountains and 480 Mastodon built for dual service, as well as new consolidation and Mikados for pulling freight trains. When the business began to increase, then, however, the freight trains on the TVFR began to get heavier. The class M1 Mikados were great at pulling fast freights, but with those freight trains demanding more power and wasn't so focused on speed. The Taiga Village Forest Railway have to find a way to build a brand new massive locomotive, and then that's when the TVFR has some early 210-2s, but those weren't fast enough. Then they decided to make this. The result was the G1 class Santa Fe's, at which the TVFR asked the American Locomotive Company to build 50 of such. Number 6800 to 6849. They immediately became the railway's new largest locomotive, however, they were not the first locomotive on the fleet to have 10 driving wheels. That title goes to their F1 class Santa Fe's. Their F1 class Santa Fe's were the first locomotive however, that title goes to an 010 locomotive. The class 01. The Taiga Village Forest Railway class 01 was the first locomotive on the fleet to have 10 driving wheels. But enough of this. Then the G1s have an astounding tractive effort of 82,786 pounds, and the G1s have a top speed of 80 miles an hour, bruh. Yes. And they have a boiler pressure they have a boiler pressure of 250 psi, and the G1s use wall short valve gear. And they have single smokestack. When first built, the G1, and as you can see, the G1s have Vanderbilt tenders, and we're one of those locomotives on and the G1 along with the K1 class mountains and other locomotive were one of those locomotive on the Taiga Village Forest fleet to have Vanderbilt tenders, designed by someone by the name of Corchus Vanderbilt, which was this kind of guy that founded the New York Central Railroad, but we're not gonna talk about it. The fuel that the G1's using. The G1 uses coal. The G1 and this massive W1 class Challengers, which I recently talked about, the G1 and the W1 uses coal, while the K1 uses oil. The G1s originally burned coal, but the G1s were later converted to oil in the G1s were later converted to burn oil in the 1940s, which increased their route availability. The G1s were built by Alco from 1925 to 1927. Now let's talk about their service lives. Dun, 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 dun. Just like all 210-2s, the G1s were assigned to haul fast. The G1s were designed to haul, were built, and were sent to work to hauling massive freight trains, such as fish, milk, coal, and even passenger trains. They even haul passenger trains. However, yes. The G1s were very successful locomotives throughout their careers. And one more thing, the G1s originally have a sunbeam headlight, but this was replaced with the Pyle National style headlight, which was found on most American locomotives. And the Taiga Village Forest Railway was no exception. The Taiga Village Forest Railway was located in this fictional island called Island of Rex. The Island of Rex was the size of France. France. Okay. Why? And anyways, how about accidents and incidents? The G1 on the 20th of June 1951, G1 locomotive number 6834 was hauling a coal train when she derailed when suddenly an avalanche was caught. The crew spotted an avalanche, and the crew applied the emergency brakes, but there was no hope of stopping it. The 6834 hit the avalanche and tumbling the locomotive and 17 of its coal cars and it caused the locomotive and as well as 17 coal cars to derail. The locomotive was pulling 32 freight cars. Yes, and here's the interior of the cab of the locomotive. Here's the firebox. Iconic. The nigga. Oh, wait. There. When first built. And Victoria. However, the G1s was plagued with 3 incidents. And the second accident occurred on second accident occurred in 1953, on July 5th, 1953, when locomotive number 6802 was hauling a mail train when suddenly she derailed. Suddenly she derailed at the well at six she hit when she derailed because there was a large rock founded on the tracks, and the locomotive hit the rock at 60 miles an hour, and the locomotive as well as 6 mail cars, and that caused the locomotive and as well as 6 mail cars to derail. Luckily, 6 people were killed in that accident, and 102 people were injured. But luckily, only 6 people died. The locomotive was taken to the Taiga Village Forest Railway on repair shops, and the locomotive was repaired at that shop before it, and then it was sent back to work. The final incident occurred on May 17th, 1956. The locomotive number 6821 was hauling a fish train when the crew spotted another locomotive in the same track as 6821, and that was the K1 locomotive number 6720, and that the K1 mount, and that was the 482 locomotive number, the K1 482 number 61 to 26. The both locomotives hit each other at 40 miles an hour. Luckily, nobody died in that accident, but 114 people were injured. The 2 locomotives were sent to the Taiga Village Forest Railway's repair shop, like I mentioned earlier, before both of them were sent back to work. And yes. And next, the G1 continued their careers on the railroad until because of dieselization, the locomotives cannot last forever. The first withdrawal of the class began in the first locomotive was number 6830. Number 6830 was withdrawn on September 28th, 1960. The rest of the class continued in service until 1961. 2 were withdrawn in 1961, and then the mass was then 10 more in 1962. The withdrawal stopped. The withdrawal were paused. The mass withdrawal of the class happened in 1967, where 23 were withdrawn in 1967. The last locomotive to be withdrawn from the last locomotive of the class, number 6839 was the last. It was number 6839 and 6840 were the last one in service. Both of them were withdrawn on September 23rd, 1968. Luckily one G1 is preserved. One G1 locomotive is preserved, and that is locomotive number 6840, which was among 2 locomotive last in service. 6840 is preserved. And yeah, the 6830 is now 6840. Just kidding. 6840 is preserved. 2 G1s are preserved, 6840 and 6830. Both of them are now on display, and 6840 had run an excursion, but it's no longer doing that. And this was the story of the G1 210-2s. If you want to see more content like this or any other, subscribe to my channel to activate notifications so you won't miss out a future upload, including my next episode where I will be talking about the K1482 mountains. Take care everyone. Merry Christmas. Goodbye for now.